In medieval England, a single penny could decide your fate. It could buy a loaf of bread, a night's shelter, or mercy from hunger's edge. To a peasant, it was survival. To a craftsman, it was proof of labor's worth. And to the desperate, it was hope pressed into silver, a tiny coin that clinked with the weight of life and death. This was no ordinary currency. The penny was the heartbeat of a kingdom, small and round, yet powerful enough to move armies, build cathedrals, and feed families, forged from almost pure silver. It gleamed in the hands of both kings and beggars alike, the one coin that truly connected them all. Introduced by the Anglo-Saxons in the 8th century, the silver penny ruled England's economy for hundreds of years. Shillings and pounds existed only as words on parchment, promises, not metal. A single pound equaled 240 pennies, though few ever saw that many at once. For most, a meager handful of coins was the measure of months of toil. In a world where every breath had a price, a single penny wasn't just money, it was life itself. The idea of owning a full pound of silver was almost unimaginable for peasants or craftsmen. Every transaction, from buying food at the market to paying church dues, revolved around these small discs of metal. Coins bore the image of the reigning monarch, serving both as money and as a constant reminder of royal power. The king's face on every penny symbolized his authority and his control over trade. Yet, far from the royal mint, in muddy villages and busy markets, the penny took on a more human role. It was the bridge between survival and starvation. For medieval England, the penny was not just a coin. It was trust made tangible, a promise that silver had value, that work could be exchanged for bread, and that even the poorest laborer's effort could, at least for a moment, be measured and rewarded. The true worth of a penny in medieval England depended on who held it and how hard they worked to earn it. For a skilled craftsman in the 13th century, daily wages might reach 2 or 3 pennies, enough to afford modest comfort. A mason, carpenter or blacksmith could buy food, ale and lodging, the basic needs of a working man. For unskilled laborers and farmhands, however, life was measured in single pennies. A full day plowing, harvesting or hauling might earn only 1 coin. Women often earned even less, sometimes a half penny for hours of back-breaking labor. Every decision, whether to eat, repair clothes or save for winter, revolved around that one small piece of silver. To lose a penny was to lose part of one's strength. To save it was a triumph of will. Records from the time show that a penny could buy roughly what a worker consumed in a day. Bread, cheese, a small measure of ale. Anything beyond that required sacrifice. In towns, where trade was brisk, money flowed more freely, but in rural villages, where barter still dominated, a penny in one's pocket meant rare independence. The ability to choose, to buy, to participate in an economy that usually excluded the poor. It was a fragile freedom, but to the medieval laborer it was everything. In the bustling markets of medieval England, the sound of clinking coins carried both hope and anxiety. With a single penny one could survive another day or fall short of it. A large loaf of bread, still warm from the communal oven, often cost 1 penny. For many that was breakfast, lunch and dinner combined. If hunger was sated, the same coin might instead buy a bowl of thick pottage, a hearty stew of grains, beans and vegetables that filled the bellies of peasants and laborers. In taverns a penny could purchase a mug of ale, the safest drink available when water was often unsafe. For those lucky enough to have 2 pennies, a small piece of meat might be within reach, though such luxuries were rare. Salt, vital for preserving food, could also be bought in small handfuls. Eggs, a few onions, or a slice of cheese. Each was measured carefully against that same humble coin. Even rest had its price. A night in a crowded inn with straw bedding and a shared fire cost about 1 penny. But in a world without safety nets, every purchase carried risk. Spend too freely and winter might bring hunger. Spend too little and weakness followed. For most medieval people, the penny was a daily wager, a fragile balance between surviving today and hoping for tomorrow. The value of a penny revealed the vast chasm between the classes. For a nobleman or merchant, a penny was nothing more than a trifle. Perhaps the cost of a servant's errand or a forgotten coin left on a table. They dealt in marks and pounds, their ledgers filled with sums most commoners would never imagine. But for peasants and artisans, the same penny carried the weight of survival. To drop one on a muddy road was to feel a pang of panic. To earn one was a victory. The disparity was so deep that while a lord might feast on venison and imported wine, his tenants struggled to afford bread baked from coarse rye. This divide was not only economic but moral. The church preached charity, reminding the rich that each penny given to the poor might save their souls. Yet true generosity was rare. Alms were often given for show, while the poor continued to live hand to mouth. In every market the contrast was visible. Fine fabrics and silver trinkets beside the worn hands of those who could never afford them. The penny, so small and common, became a symbol of division. It was the same coin in everyone's purse, but its meaning, comfort or hunger, power or dependence, changed entirely depending on who held it. A glance at medieval price lists reveals how every coin carried meaning. A single chicken could cost 2 or 3 pennies, an expensive treat for most villagers. A pair of leather shoes, stitched by hand from local hides, might require 6 to 8 pennies, nearly a week's pay for a laborer. For shepherds, owning a sheep was a mark of modest wealth. Each one cost about 12 pennies, enough to feed a family for weeks if sold or slaughtered. In the growing towns and cities of England, rent followed similar patterns of hardship. A small windowless room, barely wide enough for a bed and a stool, might cost 1 penny per day. For apprentices or wandering workers, this meant that half of their income vanished just to have a roof overhead. Food, clothing and shelter were a delicate equation that had to balance daily or disaster followed. Luxury items were far beyond reach. A pound of pepper or cinnamon, imported through long trade routes, could cost more than a sheep. Only the wealthy ever tasted such spices. Even simple candles were precious, often made of animal fat rather than beeswax because light itself had a price. These prices made one truth clear. Poverty was not the absence of work but the constant presence of cost. Every penny earned was already half spent before it ever reached a poor man's hand. Religion and money were deeply intertwined in medieval England. The church not only guided faith but also collected wealth. 1 penny at a time. Every household was expected to pay the Peter's pence, a yearly tax sent to the Pope in Rome. Though small in amount, it represented obedience to both God and church authority. For ordinary people, giving a penny to the parish was both duty and salvation. Donations were thought to cleanse sins, shorten time in purgatory and bring divine favor. The faithful would drop coins into the collection box, whispering prayers for forgiveness or for the souls of lost loved ones. Monasteries too thrived on pennies. Pilgrims traveling to holy sites left offerings, believing each silver coin bought them spiritual protection. Priests recorded these contributions carefully, turning salvation into an economy of grace. Yet beneath this system lay quiet resentment. The poor, struggling to afford bread, often felt guilt for failing to give. Some priests reminded them that even a single penny given with pure intent held more value than gold given in pride. And in that message, humble, moral and deeply human, the penny once again became more than currency. It became faith made visible, a small circle of silver connecting heaven and earth. labor and mercy, survival and hope. In the rhythm of medieval life, the penny passed quietly from hand to hand, shaping every corner of daily existence. At the village market, peasants laid out baskets of vegetables, salted fish and rough-spun cloth. Here, the clink of a coin meant trust, proof that one's labor was worth something tangible. Most villagers used pennies sparingly. Many transactions still relied on barter. Eggs traded for wool, bread for firewood. Actual coins were precious, reserved for moments when barter failed. When a farmer needed an iron tool or a tailor required imported thread. A penny became essential, a bridge between homegrown goods and the wider economy. Children learned early the meaning of the coin. Mothers counted pennies carefully before feast days, choosing between meat for the table or candles for the altar. Inns and ale houses, bustling at dusk, echoed with laughter, bought by a few well-spent coins. But beneath the bustle lay constant fragility. A sick ox, a bad harvest, or a tax collector's visit could drain a family's savings overnight. In such moments, a hidden penny might mean survival. It could buy a loaf of bread when famine struck or bribe a guard to look away. In every humble pouch and calloused palm, the penny was both a lifeline and a fragile illusion of control. By the 13th and 14th centuries, the silver penny began to lose its purity. And with it, its power, as kings waged wars and demanded more coins. Mints started mixing silver with cheaper metals. Each new issue was slightly lighter, slightly less valuable, but few dared to question royal authority. Meanwhile, prices rose. A loaf of bread that once cost a penny might soon cost two. The wages of laborers failed to keep pace, and suddenly survival required twice the work for the same reward. Chronicles from the era describe growing unrest, workers protesting, peasants demanding fair pay, even small revolts sparked by hunger. The penny, once a symbol of stability, had become an emblem of decay. The gap between rich and poor widened further as nobles hoarded silver while peasants handled debased coins. Some began to distrust money altogether, returning to barter in desperation. Inflation did more than erode wealth. It eroded faith. The people began to see the king's face stamped on every coin not as a promise but as a lie. The penny that once measured dignity now measured inequality. In its gradual corruption, one could trace the slow crumbling of medieval England's fragile social order. Beyond its silver sheen, the penny carried a moral weight that lasted long after the Middle Ages. It was a teacher of humility, patience and prudence. From this small coin emerged sayings that shaped English culture for centuries. A penny saved is a penny earned. Or look after the pennies and the pounds will look after themselves. These phrases reflected a deep respect for modest labor and careful stewardship. For ordinary people, saving a penny symbolized discipline and foresight. Parents taught their children to guard every coin, to think twice before spending. This careful relationship with money wasn't just economic. It was ethical. To waste a penny was to disrespect the toil that produced it. Even literature echoed this sentiment. In medieval tales and ballads, the humble penny often appeared as a test of virtue, the gift of a poor widow, the offering of a penitent sinner, or the last coin of a wandering pilgrim. These small acts of sacrifice reminded listeners that true worth was not in abundance, but in intent. Over time, the penny came to embody the English ideal of honest work. Steady, modest, enduring. It wasn't the coin of kings, but of commoners, a quiet monument to effort and endurance. Its story is not one of wealth, but of character. A penny in medieval England was more than money. It was the pulse of a society built on labor, faith, and fragile hope. Each coin carried fingerprints of those who had earned it. Blacksmiths, farmers, weavers, widows, People whose names history rarely records but whose sweat sustained a kingdom. In its circular form, the penny mirrored the circle of life itself. Work, reward, survival, and renewal. It bought bread for the hungry, light for the faithful, and time for those fighting against poverty's slow hunger. To hold a penny was to hold a fragment of one's own humanity. Proof that effort, however small, had meaning. Today, its value in silver is gone, but its lesson endures. Every society measures itself not by the wealth of its richest, but by the dignity granted to those who labor for a single coin. The medieval penny reminds us that value does not lie in the metal, but in the hands that shape it, and that behind every transaction, behind every price, there beats the quiet heart of a human being trying simply to live.